Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the City Commission combined meeting with the Budget Advisory Board. I appreciate everyone attending here today. And Mr. Donaldson, would you please like to call the roll for your committee?
Oh, I
Mr.
couldn't hear you.
Donaldson, did you change your name?
No, I
Could you
couldn't.
please call the roll of your of the board?
Vice Chair Jeff Lowe. Bill Brown. Prabhuline Patel. And Chair Donaldson here.
Okay, great. We have a quorum on your board?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll of the City Commission.
Commissioner Moritas, not present. Commissioner Glassman.
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie, not present. Vice Mayor Sorensen.
Here.
Mayor Trentalles.
Here, so we have a quorum of the City Commission. So, Mr. City Manager, how would you like to begin this process? You want to defer to Mr. Donaldson to begin a presentation, or do we have a presentation first?
No.
Mr. Donaldson.
Thank you. Mayor, Commissioners, since we last met on June 21st, BAB has met 2 additional times. I'm hearing an echo.
There's no echo, but it is kind of fuzzy.
Okay. So today, the purpose of the meeting is to really give you a high level, just a quick overview of some key points and be available to answer some questions. Because at the last meeting, we went into a lot of depth. So really today, the workshop was to share with you that we've met 2 additional times. This past Thursday, the board, all of BAB was present, all 7 members, and we had a unanimous approval of moving forward with the budget as proposed. So we had a 100% unanimous decision on that.
Well, I guess the meeting's over then.
So there are some things that I just wanted to highlight and to make sure that we had clarification. This year, the 2023 total budget for the city of Fort Lauderdale is $845.6 million. $388 million is in the general fund. When we think about the total budget, it's really for somebody like myself that wasn't really involved in the budget before I became a member of the Budget Advisory Board 4 years ago. You think about the budget and you think that that's all driven by tax revenue because we spend so much time on ad valorem. But of that $845 million budget this year, even with the 12% record increase in tax values for the city, we are bringing in $193 million from ad valorem. So it's less than 25% of the total revenue that this city drives on, which is really a great thing in the fact that the city is so diversified in its revenue streams that with a change or a correction with the tax values and a change up or down in the ad valorem, it doesn't have a disproportionate amount of what we as citizens need in order to have the city function. One of the positives this year is that we're looking to add FTEs in departments throughout the city, unlike in past years where we were in a more of a strategic freeze or being we didn't have the revenue streams to be able to afford that. So basically, the first $10 million is for keeping the payroll and benefits for last year's number of personnel and staff with the expected increases. That being said, we don't have our contractual obligations completed. We're still in negotiations, the city is, with all 5 bargaining units. But we've put into this budget based upon an average of 5-year historical increases through the past 2 renewals of contracts. And so we feel comfortable that the number that is in the budget is a good number. And we're hoping that the negotiations come to fruition of that. But I just wanted to share with you a couple of the things that as taxpayers, I think that they would be more interested in hearing as to what we're doing to make sure that we're addressing the service levels appropriately. Last year, as you know, we added 14 FTEs to the fire and rescue team,
For those that don't know what FTE means, is full-time employees.
full-time employees. So that was funded for part of the year in the 2022 fiscal year, and they will be fully up and running for the 2023. This year, after not having increased the FTEs in the police division since prior to 2018, we are adding 21 FTEs in this budget for the police department. That is 20 sworn officers and one additional psychologist for the police department. So the police department, between 2018 and 2022, in those 5 fiscal years, although they didn't add FTEs, I do want the public to know that we did fund them because there's so much conversation about that. And their funds went from 2018 to 2022, an increase of $20 million in payroll and benefits with the same number of people in those 5 years. So that was a 16% increase. So this year,
Over
the budget,
5 years, 16% over 5 years.
yes. So $20 million increase.
Just a question on that. Have you done any comparative analysis in terms of number of sworn officers as a ratio of population or so forth? Or I'm just wondering kind of nationally how we're falling in terms of where we need to be or.
That hasn't been shared with us, but I know that the new chief is looking more to the ratio. I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I've been told that they're looking at the ratio of sworn officers on the street versus also back room, et cetera. So they're working with that, but we felt that adding an additional 20 was the right start, and we felt comfortable that there was funding in place in order to support that initiative.
Okay.
So I don't have the quite answer on that nationally, but I know that they're focusing their efforts and reevaluating the department and how those will be categorically looked at.
Okay, nice.
Okay. Another thing that additional FTEs in the new 2023 budget is also in the fire rescue. There will be 3 additional personnel for the new substation south of the tunnel. There will also be 2 additional $357,000 for getting the mobile integrated health system up and running, which is a new proactive preventative to try to help those individuals that tend to call 911 for really non-emergency, and so helping to work with them. Also, there's been a lot of conversation in front of your board, or in front of the commission over the past year or 2 and before about noise and complaints and everything of trying to get neighbors and businesses to coexist as our downtown has been growing so exponentially. So there are 3 additional code officers for nighttime. That's $528,000 in this budget. There's also a budget added to have various outside organizations that will be hired to evaluate and review our noise code, et cetera. So we're going to be using an outside company, and there's money in that in order to do a consultation and share with us how we may be able to tweak our systems. So there will actually be people that can go out in the evening. So those are additional FTEs.
And sorry, Brian, just to interrupt on that, and maybe this is for Greg, but I'm interested with the code officers. What level of service do we have now, just so the public understands? And what will the I think you said 3 FTEs
3.
get us to from coverage standpoint?
So yes, obviously that would help us at the nighttime. We have a lot of activities, a lot of reporting from neighbors about noise issues,
Right.
Vacation rentals, and they can certainly assist on that. Director Cooper can also elaborate more on how they will be employed.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Chris Cooper, Director, DSD.
Is
So,
your
Vice
microphone
Mayor-
on?
Oh, I think it is. I just was not close enough. Sorry. So we are currently doing nighttime enforcement on the weekends, Thursday through Sunday, and we're doing that with existing staff. So we're doing that through a lot of flex scheduling, overtime, and things of that nature. So what these positions will do, I believe it's 1 senior code officer and 3 code officers. It will allow us to have dedicated staff for those times to be on call and also do proactive routine inspections for noise and other types of activities that typically occur in the evenings and nights.
So, Greg, where I'd like to get to the level of service is 24/7 code vigilance engagement. Is this getting us to 24/7 or only? Yeah, go ahead.
It's not 24/7. So basically, these are intended to cover Thursday through Sunday into the early morning hours. Midnight, 1, 2 a.m. Probably not quite as late on Sunday, but through the nighttime.
Okay.
So that'll be good for vacation rentals and things like that.
Right.
Okay, great.
So I think it's a good start, Mayor. I like where we're heading on this. And I guess, Greg, my thinking is great. Let's kind of put this into play and then evaluate as it's going because we're having issues on the weekends, as you know, with vacation rentals and so forth. So, okay.
Commissioner, when they were, there was a report that had been shared, not recently, but in the past, as to when their calls were coming in, et cetera. So I really don't think we need to fund 24/7.
Yep.
I think that most of the calls were being made before 2 a.m. And then things settled down. So
Before 2 a.m. on the weekends?
even on the weekends, yeah. So most of the complaints, if there was issues, it was called in before then. It didn't like, oh, there was all quiet and then it started,
Right.
later. So I think this is a great step in the right direction, but I think there are other areas where we would look at additional, if the city was to come up with additional funding for additional FTEs, I think our board would be sharing that there's other avenues than going to code for 24/7.
Yep, sure, I get it. Greg, there were also issues with kind of our process through reporting. For example, when a neighbor calls up to report a code issue, a noise violation, and so forth, getting that out into the field. And so Anthony's been working on this. I know Chris has, and I think we're still just making some tweaks, but I think we're getting in a good direction in kind of improving that process. So yeah, as we're more efficient with that, Ryan, I think it'll be, even better. Yeah. Okay, great, thanks.
Let's see. Also in Parks and Rec, there have been a lot of public feedback to the commission and throughout neighborhoods and HOAs in addition about the lack of maintenance in some of our medians. We put in all these beautiful new landscapes and then they're just growing with weeds, et cetera. So there is going to be 3 additional FTEs to help with our expanded median maintenance. There's also been concerns from citizens and negative feedback in relationship to the cemeteries. So there's going to be 4 additional FTEs. Now those don't come out of the general fund. That'll be through the cemetery fund. But basically, my point that I wanted to make was that I really feel comfortable, and as does the rest of the team sitting behind me and those that aren't here today, that this is a very well-balanced budget, and it really was tying into things that the citizens of the city, we've heard through all of our various connections and contacts, through some of us sitting here in commission meetings, et cetera, that they were challenging you as a commission that they needed help with. So I think that putting the FTEs into that, and then also the priorities of funding some of your commission priorities. So for example, there's new funding of $200,000 in the proposed budget for the Salvation Army for overnight sheltering of some of our homeless. So when you look into the depth of the budget, there is, when we were reviewing it and looking at it, the initiatives that you had set as a group in January, which I and some others also heard you narrow down, there is money behind some of those initiatives in this budget. So I think that has improved each year over the last 3 years as you have been meeting in January and having that goal setting, that the city staff has really taken that to heart and I feel as if there's money behind a lot of those initiatives. So I feel comfortable sharing that with you. Also, as part of your initiatives was the transportation and transportation mobility. And there's been a lot of question out there, in at least I was receiving, and I know some of the other board members have mentioned that they were, there was confusion out there, so I just want to put the record straight. There's now $3 million in the Las Olas mobility in this budget. We've moved up $1 million since June when we met last from future year. And that is to look at the design, the actual design versus conceptual design from Andrews Avenue east to Northeast 17th.
So that is a response to the commission's decision to move forward with the widening of the sidewalks and the reduction of the travel lanes down to 2, correct?
Yes, and your direction that let's focus on the retail section of Las Olas first.
Right,
Actually-
that's Andrews to 17.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. So that everybody knows what you're saying, putting
Right.
it into context, it's going from just talking about it
Right.
to putting it into a design phase to see if and how it will work.
And how much it will cost, because right now, at a conceptual level, people are throwing out a lot of different numbers out there.
Right.
And then different neighborhoods are going a little crazy, wondering how that's going to be funded and whether or not they're going to be assessed, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to put the horse before the cart. And really, the next step is taking this. So originally there was 2 million, and I believe 3 million of the 7 million for the Las Olas mobility in the CIP. So the decision was made to move up an additional million to the front side so that we can actually go into the design phase. And then everyone will be on the same page and get the businesses' buy-ins, et cetera, and understand what the actual cost projections would be based upon that, and then move forward versus just continuing to talk in concept and have more auxiliary meetings.
So, Greg, if this budget is approved and the money is allocated, have we been told what kind of time frame we would be considering in terms of getting the design back to us as we move forward in this process?
I'd like to ask Director Rogers to share what would be the estimated time frame for that to happen.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commission. Ben Rogers, Director of Transportation Mobility. Mayor, to answer your question, I'm in the process now of writing a memo that will go to the city manager for review later this week. It's going to be pretty extensive on the next steps, the assessment conversation, memorializing things that we've already talked about, where the initial funding would go. To your specific question of how long would it take, we've already done kind of the initial step of building the scope of what this solicitation would look like. So that way when the dollars are allocated in October, that we can start the ground running. And we think it will be about, 14 months, 16 months for the design phase. If we had all the construction funding in place and we had everything, ready to roll, it's probably 42 to 48 months for design and construction of that segment of the 3 character areas that we've identified.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions for Ben?
I do, Mayor, thank you. So, Ben, what is your plan in terms of east of 17th Street, in terms of moving forward?
Yeah, so the memo will definitely have a plan in there, but to steal the thunder, what we're going to do is for this first phase, the first $3 million now, it will be the 3 character areas that you've identified to move to design. The other 2 character areas, the Los Olas Isles and the beach, we're going to continue public outreach. We've created some supplemental information, kind of a 1-page flyer that kind of talks about where we're at right now, what it looks like. Staff and probably in conjunction with your office will do some neighborhood outreach and maybe get some more feedback to see where we are in consensus. But we have $2.5 million allocated in the budget for next year. If we are at a point where we can have consensus, those dollars for next year's budget would go to fund the design of those portions.
For east, 2.5 is designated for the following fiscal year.
Correct. So
24.
there's $7 million total in this proposed budget. There's $3 million for FY23, $2.5 million for FY24, and $1.5 million for FY25.
Okay, great. And where are we with regards to the two crosswalks east of the Sasbro Bridge on East Las Olas?
Everything remains on schedule for that project. We're in the design phase right now, which we anticipate will take through the remainder of this calendar year. And then sometime in early spring, we should be able to go out to bid for construction.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
And those two crosswalks were in the 2022 budget, so that's why
Yes.
they're already in the design phase. Okay. Let's see. So also, since we last met, there was an enhanced, part of the reason why we were able to do that additional million was of moving that up, was there was some revenue enhancements. So the final number of July 1st from the county assessor came in at a value higher than what the original preliminary was. Also, which was about 1.7 million, and then we had some additional revenues from some of our intergovernmental shares, et cetera. So that's how we ended up with that additional 1 million moved up. There's a couple other things. One of the things was at the last meeting, at one of the commission meetings, you had a presentation from DDA in regards to the city looking for the city to partner on the re-imaging of Huizinga Park. BAB did meet twice since we met with you, and we had a robust conversation at both of those meetings. And at the last meeting, once we understood where we were coming in with the budget, it did pass 6-1 in favor of partnering with DDA on that. We did have 3 caveats that we wanted to have the city attorney put into the agreement. And so I just wanted to share with them, these were our concerns when we did vote 6-1 in favor, was to ensure that the $5 million over 7 years was equally prorated each year. We wanted to make sure that the $5 million never exceeded 33% of the total capital. So if we're making a progress payment of helping to that, and right now they're anticipating it's $15 million in capital, but it ends up they shifting it to $12 million, then we want our portion to be only $4 million. So we want to make sure the contract says no more than $5 million, but no more than 33% of the contribution. So we're a 1/3 partner, which is what the initial ask is. The other thing is that we wanted to make sure that there were no capital improvements toward helping to get the restaurant pad or area of the park that the restaurant is going to be, that we don't want any of this capital improvement money going toward anything to do with improvements for an entity where the city is not going to receive any benefit of the revenue stream, because that is strictly going to DDA.
So what if it comes to 40 million?
Well, our cap is 5 million
Right, but
and a
and
third.
they can't do it unless they have 40 million. They have 5 from us and 10 from other sources as they anticipated their budget.
And they will have to probably bond additional money or get more donors to ante up.
Are we still responsible for participating if they can't complete the project?
If they cancel the project, you mean? So because the costs come in too high and they can't fund it, then we would stop our payments, which obviously all of these payments, we can't use a multi-year, we can't tie up the commission to that. It's just like all of our other, contracts. Then we have to, if the commission each year allocates the money or not allocates the money. But that's why we were saying not 5 million up front, equal amount of
Okay.
each
Get
year,
it.
and then you get it. And then the other thing was we heard and learned that they have a $900,000 agreement with the state for state funding. So we know that those are going to have caveats with the number of years. So we wanted to make sure that they shared with our city attorney any agreement that they were making with the state as to how many years that continues to stay a park, so that we had the same safeguards the state did with our money. So those were the three things. And with those, and the director was in agreement that she felt that these were all accomplishable. So we then voted 6-1 in favor of that, and that $700 and some $1,000 is in the in this new proposed budget that the city manager has put. Also, going forward with future, we were thinking about, some organizations that are charitable organizations. DDA is not a charitable organization, but it's an outside organization. So what I suggested was that we look at these outside organizations as a group of, because there could be additional opportunities or things come forward to us, like the DDA with this Huizinga Park, which we did feel was a benefit to the city to improve that, to add the restrooms and the quality of life. So if there was another opportunity, so versus the number of dollars that we have put in the budget in the past to be only listed as charitable, I think the better terminology going forward would be other outside organizations, because we're giving them a contribution of city taxpayers' dollars, but we're not running those organizations.
Right, but I don't think we can give money unless it is charitable in nature.
Well, we're giving money to DEA for Huizinga.
That's a nonprofit.
But is it categorically?
It's not a nonprofit? It's a government agency.
Government.
Well, that's considered, under the IRS rules, it's considered a nonprofit. So
Okay,
we
so
can't give it to a for-profit entity.
right. So what we were just saying is,
That language doesn't work.
okay,
When you say outside agency, outside organization, outside of what? It can't be a for-profit.
right, okay.
right.
So government or the other. So we were trying to come up with that these are organizations
Come up
that
with a phrase. Okay.
are doing works within the city which benefit the taxpayers. So in this budget, there is currently laid out 1.9 million to various organizations, and I just wanted to share those. For example, I'm not going down the whole list, but there's $500,000 for the NSU Art Museum. There's $215,000 for $225 for Riverwalk, Stranahan House, $100,000, Salvation Army, which is a new $200,000 to help with nighttime stays for the homeless, and a summer youth employment of $301,000, and a Museum of Discovery and Science, $215,000. So the details of that list is in the proposed budget, and we're suggesting to also increase these organizations to the $714,000 for Huizinga, which would take the total contributions of these nonprofits or government organizations to almost $2.7 million versus last year's $2.4 million. So there is an increase in that. And I want to open it up to any questions on those.
Yeah, Brian, question on that. So last couple years towards addressing homelessness, we've given, remind me who we gave to last year, United Way, or Laura, if you want to give me those numbers.
So United Way was a partner in years before. Fiscal year 22 is the first year United Way opted out of the partnership. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can give it to you. We partnered with an organization where we bought equipment for folks and parking. I'll provide you with that information, but there were several different smaller agreements this year with direct service providers versus United Way, who subcontracted with.
Are there direct service providers not included in this grant funding list?
Yeah, so there are many organizations that we partnered with in fiscal year 22 that are not recommended for funding in 23.
So is the only entity we're providing homeless support for, or the main one being Salvation Army at 200,000?
That's the largest one.
Yes, through general funds. HCD, our Housing and Community Development, they administer entitlement funds, so CDBG home and ship funds that also go to serve that purpose in a different way. This just articulates the general funds allocated towards this purpose.
So, okay, so total funding for homelessness support and services has been reduced.
No,
Is that right?
I don't believe it's been reduced, it's been shifted.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
can, we can provide you with an
Okay, yeah, if you'd work
overview
on that,
of all the
I'd like to-
funding last year, all the funding this year.
Okay.
It's a variety of funding sources, and some of the funding is actually in operational budgets. So for
Got it.
example, neighbor
Okay.
support budget has community court funds that.
Perfect, yeah, which is critical.
Homelessness related.
Okay.
We tried to articulate a lot of that in the city manager's message. We outline the commission priorities, and we try to share what, funding is aligned with those
Yep.
priorities, so, let me point you to the page.
That's fine. You don't have to do it on the fly, Laura, whenever.
So I could read you those items, but, it doesn't provide a comparison to last year, which we could provide. for
Yeah,
you
I'd like to
offline.
see that just, but Brian, generally you feel like we're where we need to be in terms of similar.
Because some
investment.
of those small organizations that did receive allocation didn't actually take all of it, and some of them were having a more difficult time providing the services that they had thought they were going to provide.
Right. Okay. All right, good.
As in 2021, when you had disappointment with how United Way used some of the dollars, et cetera, and they
Right.
were using subcontractors. So in reviewing it, I feel comfortable that based upon your initiatives and your outlines of your priorities, that this budget aligns with those more than it has in any of the past years. I feel most comfortable with this budget compared to any of the 4 years I've sat before you.
So are you saying you don't want to go through the nonprofit selection process again this year? Is that what you're saying? Mayor, how
Do I really need to say that?
is that? Is the committee in agreement with you? I don't.
Yeah, I
Yeah, they
think
are.
so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We were looking at higher level and we were trying to get additional items and really get into the weeds on some of the other departments.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
So at this point, if there wasn't any other questions in regards to any of the details, then I'll sort of do a little final recap. So if there's not any questions, otherwise you can
Well,
ask them
this is
toward
the,
the
this is the
end.
beginning of the process, and,
Okay.
and perhaps at our next meeting, we may
Well,
have.
3 weeks from tonight, we will be having our first budget hearing.
Right.
So we would hope that any discussions would be done before you're actually doing a vote on it. So, and not that
We
evening.
can communicate with you outside
Right.
of these meetings.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I just wanted to share with you, going forward in 2024, or even actually in 2023, when you've read the auditor's report, there are some open items in this budget. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have put into the budget, our city staff has, the estimate of what we think the contractual obligations would be, but those contracts are not finalized. So we're working with the budget based upon a best guess. So there may be some changes in the middle of the year where we have to do line item budget amendments based upon how those come in. So that's an uncertain. The other uncertainty is that we know that when we did all of these CIP projects and do our projections out, which we do 5 years, or staff does 5 years out, we put in our best guess estimate. But now we know that some of the contracts are coming in higher based upon inflationary costs of both materials and workers. So there may be some things that are coming up during this fiscal year that we may have to tweak. And those are both concerns going forward into 2024. The other issue in 2024, which will be starting this October, is that after the last 2 years of receiving over $20 million a year from the federal government for the CARES Act, We won't have that in our 2024 budget. So we will be having more of a challenge in 2024. I also don't think that we'll have the kind of increase in the base as we did this past year with the 12.9. I think new construction will continue to do that. But I think that we're seeing a slowing in other residential and resales, and the increases aren't as great as they were. But just one thing, when people ask me where's the money going, where is it going, why do we have so much new construction? Well, this city has been able to give our taxpayers a great value for their dollar with 16 years of this flat ad valorem rate. And a big contributor of that has been the additional revenue that has been generated by new construction. Our revenue for new constructions this past year was, the value of last year was $1.7 billion in new construction in 2022 for the 2023. The prior year was a new record at $1.1 billion. And to keep it in concept, between 2013 to 2018, so those 5 years, the total was $1.3 billion. And last year we had 1.7 in 1 year. So we're at a big growth. And I think one of the future things is that, to your point, we're going to have to really look at staffing levels and as this city grows and being creative as to how we're looking at different departments, et cetera, and try to be ahead of the curve for the public and making sure that we're providing adequate services for this growing city. So those are some of our concerns for when we start meeting in October for 2024. But I feel comfortable, and we had a unanimous that we felt comfortable with this budget as it's proposed for 2023. And we look forward to any little tweaks or comments that you and your team have to the city manager or myself over the next 3 weeks, so we can have a good vote and an easy presentation with the public on the hearings 3 weeks from today and 4 weeks from yesterday.
Okay.
Okay? And with that, I think
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to introduce the interim city auditor because that's the next thing on the agenda, if you don't mind.
I do want to.
Unless you had comments.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
The second item on our agenda today
He's
is the
presenting.
city auditor's
But
report.
we're not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions now from?
Yeah, you mentioned this 1.7 plus billion dollars in
Value.
new construction, and then you went on to say that we have to look at how we move forward and the city staffing in particular, how the growth is going to take place, and so that we're prepared for the services that we render the constituents or residents. And a light bulb came on in my head, not that it wasn't there, but I know a few meetings ago we were talking about union contracts, and I think it was fire at the time, and we struggled to make a decision to do more there, but I think we got past it. So where I'm going with this statement is our unions, in particular next, I think is police, coming up for negotiations. And it's funny you say that. So how would these variables or denominators come into play with what you just enlightened us with this money and this growth that we have in the city? So will we be able to deal with those unions across the board?
Well, one thing that I had said earlier, so I'll repeat. In this new budget, there are the first time in over 7 years, we're adding 20 uniformed police officers in this budget, and an additional full-time psychologist for the police department to go from 1 to 2. So, and we added additional in code enforcement, there's additional in Parks and Rec, there's additional in IT. So unlike the past years where we have been very FTE conscious of being strategically reducing, this is the first year in the 4 years that I've been involved in BAB that we were recommending and is in the budget additional FTEs for the city. The total actual for the total number of employees or FTEs. In 2020, we had 1,847, and in the 2023 budget, there are 1,927 for the city in general fund.
So that's not just for the police department. There's
No, that's
also
just total.
The fire department also have an additional complement
Yes.
of firefighters that are be adding as
So
our
they're up
population.
18 from 2 years ago.
Yeah, right, and I get that, because that's something that we drove that.
But we've added 4 more this year.
When we were trying to, hold the line, but now with this new excitement, I know in next year's budget, I think we'll be negotiating another union. I think it's police. And my question is still, how will our unions, fare moving forward when you make a statement like, we need to prepare for this growth. We need to prepare for this. So how would they be, 3, 4, 2, 3 years from now in terms of what's happening? And I know you answered the now. The now, we're part of the now. Mm-hmm. But my thing is, this growth, I just want to make sure that we're able to negotiate with the growth with our unions.
Okay. And that's one thing that we have to keep in the forefront over the next couple of years.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, now business 2, the review of the proposed budget presented by Patrick Riley, the interim city auditor. Mr. Riley.
Patrick Riley, interim city auditor. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. The City Auditor's Office has performed a review of the fiscal year proposed budget. The budget is compiled by the City Manager pursuant to Section 4.09 of the City Charter. We had several objectives for the review of the fiscal year 23 proposed budget. The primary focus of our review was to ensure that the proposed budget is balanced, that revenue and expenditures estimates are reasonable and materially correct, and that the proposed millage is in compliance with the Florida statutes. The methodology for our review consisted of the following. The city auditors performed various analytical procedures, reviewed budget supporting documentation, spoke with and had inquiries with the Office of Management and Budget, Finance Department, and other department budget coordinators as we needed to do. Additionally, our office compared the line item budget detail based on our audit criteria and for the fiscal 23 proposed budget to the projections of actual expenditures through September 30th, 2022, and the fiscal year 2022 adopted and amended budgets. Also, our office analyzed trends and variances of 3 prior year fiscal years budget versus actual to gain a historical perspective on those prior years. Our office's conclusion is that the fiscal 23 proposed budget of the city of Fort Lauderdale is considered balanced as presented. All known and determinable revenue and expenditures are reasonable and materially correct. In addition, priorities established by the Commission's annual action plan all show funding allocations in the coming year. And the proposed millage is in compliance with the Florida statutes. As the new year approaches, there are still pending issues that have not been resolved regarding the final budget allocation. Therefore, our office cannot provide assurance that the fiscal year 23 budget completely addresses all known budgetary items that may occur. We have 3 concerns, as Mr. Donaldson spoke a little bit about. These concerns are not items that impact our overall conclusion. however, bear consideration for both the proposed budget and for future years' impacts. Number one is the collective bargaining agreement. Although the Office of Management and Budget is anticipating a new collective bargaining agreement with 6 unions, the actual costs are still unknown. These unknown salary and benefit increases will have an impact once resolved and should be conservatively estimated. Number two, community investment plan. Regarding the construction projects in the CIP.
Let's just, Pat, if you could just pause there.
Yes.
You know, Mom, Greg, can you just generally high level, how are we doing on those 6? Timeline generally?
Sure, Vice Mayor. We started discussions approximately 3 weeks ago, and the discussions have been with understanding what are the needs and also what we can also offer with respect to our financial capacity. Those discussions are continuing, and we're also starting a discussion this week with the police department as well. So yes, we want to reach an agreement very soon, knowing that it's important to the employees and also to determine our fiscal responsibility as well.
Okay, great, thanks. And what's, timeline-wise, what's our hope? Another month, couple months?
That's
We
the
are
union representatives who are here.
To be
we are
determined.
very optimistic to have something soon, but we have made ourselves very much available.
Okay.
And we have also, invited the unions to share any ideas, any feedback, because we certainly want to consider that employees and also employee safety and just the compensation is very important to retain and recruit talent as well.
Right, okay, thanks. Thanks, Pat. Go ahead.
All right, the second item was also discussed a little bit is the community investment plan. Regarding all construction projects in the CIP, it should be noted that the recent increase in inflation will also have an impact on the cost of materials and labor throughout the coming years. And it's going to affect, new projects and projects that are existing that we want to complete. So it's very highly likely that the inflation is going to have an effect on those projects. The third item is the ERP implementation. Phase 1 of the ERP implementation is scheduled for October 2022. However, there are several risks have been identified. Those risks could impact the final impact on the schedule and the budget. Included but not limited to turnover in upper management, consultants, staffing shortages, data scrubbing, data testing, training, and conversion processes. Based on our assessment in the history of the ERP projects, and I've had some experience with implementing systems in the past, we likely see additional costs related to that project. Lastly, I would like to recognize the Office of Budget and Management. Budget staff has maintained a robust approach to organizing and compiling budget information and supporting documentation. So thank you, Laura, and your staff. And I also would like to recognize the audit staff of the City Auditor's Office for their excellent work for the review of the fiscal year 23 proposed budget. And some of my staff is here, and thank you. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you. One person has signed up to speak. Bonnie, did you want to speak? You're okay, okay.
Got our piece of the pie.
Okay, finally, business 3, the fiscal year 2022 Budget Advisory Board work plan.
Okay,
What's
so,
that?
It's just an overview as to what our task at hand will be. We will be, 5 of us are being reappointed at tonight's general meeting. There are openings in some of the commission districts. So we currently have only 7 on board. So I guess we will wait for, they're all in divisions that are up for election. So we'll probably get those appointed after the November election. So we will be reviewing in September. Our board meets monthly and 4 times in May, et cetera, so we meet a lot. So in September, we're going to be sort of analyzing what went well this year, what do we want to do next year, et cetera, et cetera. And we have 2 new people that have been with us for less than 3 months. They got thrown in the deep end. So we'll help identify what we need to do with training, which is usually our November. October, we will start off our new year. As a team, we'll elect a new chair and vice chair. And then we go into the rest of the year. So we know that 24 is going to be a little more challenging because of the fact that we right now have a $20 million hole from federal. But luckily, the majority of that was spent to one-time items, so they went to CIPs to not create a issue of reoccurring. So that was money that helped.
I don't think people understand that what you do is strictly voluntary. And the time and commitment and sacrifice that you make to the city, often it goes unrecognized. So I want to take this moment and thank you and all the members of the committee, of the board, for the work that you do and your service to our city. And I know it's not just the meetings that you attend, but it's the study that you do before and after meetings. And I know there's a significant time commitment that all of you make. So this commission definitely thanks you for everything that you do. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you on behalf of the team behind me and the others that are not here with us today. But I think over the past couple of years, we have utmost respect for the director of management and budget and her team. And, I think I'll speak for myself. I know that I'm a little more challenging than probably a lot of people would like. And so all the department heads that deal with us in all of our questions and are zeroing in. But I do think that as a team, we partner with the city and make sure that we're trying to make the best decisions on behalf of the taxpayers and on the direction of all of your initiatives. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anyone on the commission have any other questions or comments?
Mayor, I just would like to ditto your comments and say thank you personally as well. Also, the fact that staff is so cooperative with the volunteer
No
budget
subpoenas, no
advisory
FBI
board.
investigating.
I mean, I just think that the cooperation between our paid staff and our volunteer budget advisory board is incredible. And I do so appreciate Office Manager and Budget, City Manager's Office, our auditor, and your staff. Thank you so much for your analysis. So again, all of the departments who have cooperated so beautifully with not just staff, but our volunteer board. It really is a great collaborative effort, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mayor, but I think it can't be repeated often enough, just the incredible teamwork. So I also say thank you.
Mr. City Manager, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
No, I mean, you really said it well, and I can't say it further that, the BAB members, they're here every evening, they're committed, they do their research that helps us formulate the plan that you have before you. So we greatly thank you for your time, for your commitment, your passion to serve. We also want to also thank our charter officers for their input and helping us also formulate the plan before you. And also staff, especially OMB, for putting all the numbers together. It's a task that's sometimes very challenging, but the output has helped us get some of the CIPs and accelerate some of the growth that we need to. And thank you for the opportunity to serve as well.
All right, thank you. Laura, do you have anything to add?
Thank you for your nice comments. OMB is a great team. I'm so lucky to be the leader of such awesome analysts and staff. We work really well with the departments. It's fun. Budget really is fun. It's trying to find a way to move your priorities forward and serve the community. And again, thank you for the opportunity to serve. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. This workshop is concluded. Thank you.